Well, our guest today really doesn't need an introduction if you are in the mobile space. If you don't know who this is and you're in the mobile space, just stop for a second, listen to his name, and then go Google him, and then come back and listen to the rest of this episode. He's the author of 12 books. He's a prolific speaker, and I mean prolific speaker, and a prolific blogger. If you ever sat and read a number of his blog posts, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know how he does it so quickly, but he is a prolific blogger. I consider him a mobile soothsayer. He's the inventor of the SMS dance and one of the greatest ambassadors for the mobile industry, period. I don't think I have to say his name. Do I have to say his name? It's straight from Hong Kong. I think what is it? Tomi Ahonen or T-Dog?
Tomi Ahonen, T-Dog.
No, just plain Tomi Ahonen. Tomi, thank you so much for coming on and doing this. Really appreciate you coming on and being a part of this. Thank you.
Hi, Rob, and hi, Peggy, and thanks for having me back, Rob. Very much my delight talking to your listeners and viewers.
Well, it's our pleasure having you here. You are in the middle of Hong Kong. You have been, how would you classify what it is that you do? You are what I would consider the ambassador for the mobile industry. You are out there preaching mobile, and you have been preaching mobile for how long now?
Yeah, I was stolen to the dark side. The force took me from the fixed landline business to the mobile side when I was doing the world's first fixed mobile converged platform. And that was, 15 years ago for Elisa Corporation in Finland with Radiolinja. And then that brought me to Nokia and eventually on this wonderful mobile path. But yeah, I think that I early on saw the light. I was very, very blessed to have as one of my mentors the guy who invented SMS, Finnish guy called Matti Makkonen, and he had wonderful thoughts. He said that the mobile phone will bring us from the ears to the eyes. And he was the one who said that mobile is not worse for having a small keypad. It is better because my mobile can be operated single-handedly, whereas a laptop needs two hands. So these kind of lessons were very early in my enlightenment. And after that, I've been just exploring where are the opportunities, where's the money. So from ringing tones to SMS to eventually mobile advertising and Angry Birds, crazy games, app downloads, and now we're going into virtual reality, augmented reality, all the funky stuff.
Good. Well, that's one of the things that I love about following you is that it's not fluff. Right, what you're talking about is really about what people are very confused about. Where is the revenue? Where's the money opportunity in the mobile space? And you've been focused on that forever. So you're looking at not just trends that are happening, long-term trends. You're talking about, listen, this is where companies, organizations can either enhance their brand and build out revenue or new revenue, as opposed to the fluff stuff that we're seeing some of the mobile companies building right now. The first layer, I'd say, you're thinking about revenue all the time.
Yes, and I think that my very special niche is a science fiction writer who has the least view of the future. So I only look at science fiction into the next 18 months. What can you honestly launch now and make money still this year?
Yeah.
Or early next year? That's the only thing I'm interested in. And so I'm not interested in what was successful in the last internet age or previous media. And I'm not interested in what the future will be when digital will be embedded in our body. I'm curious about that, but that's not what I'm writing about. I want to see who makes money today. Who figured it out on what can we do with, just like we had astonishing news today on Twitter, Financial Times, Wall Street Journal. So Financial Times, one of the biggest financial newspapers in the world, one of the earliest mobile content providers. The Financial Times came to mobile more than 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And they just now last week terminated their iPhone app. They're doing all of the Financial Times mobile now purely on the mobile web. So this is the kind of issues that yes, we need to explore the opportunities, what's possible on SMS or what's possible on WAP or what's possible on MMS, what's possible on a smartphone application, what's possible on the mobile internet. But for me, the guidance has always been, where's the money? So that is the sustainable future. I don't want to just spam people's pockets and make them uncomfortable. I want to find businesses that really make money.
And that's what I love. So what is it about? What is it? What's out there right now that's capturing your attention? We sat down a couple of years ago in Toronto, and we were talking about this. The cannibalization that's happening inside the mobile industry. Like basically, mobile is what you called it, a $6 trillion industry, and it was swallowing other industries whole, like cameras and. So, but what is it now? What is the burning platform? What did the Nokia guy burning platform? Sorry, the burning issue that is happening right now that you're seeing out there that really is getting your attention?
That the part that excites me, and I was just willing to accept last week, 2 weeks ago, that augmented reality has become the 8th mass medium. So my 6th book was mobile is the 7th mass medium, beyond television and radio and internet and so forth. Now I'm willing to accept that augmented reality, beyond just smartphones, we're starting to get the Google goggles and things like that coming along in the future. That will be the 8th mass medium. So in terms of what excites me and energizes me is to see all of the innovations that are coming in this space. We're starting to see movie theaters experimenting this, with retail establishments experimenting with augmented reality, etc. But on a more practical level, what are people talking about today? I think that the big story right now is the collapse of Nokia, is the rapid rise of Samsung, is the Android platform versus iPhone platform versus Microsoft kind of battle royale for the who owns the platform of the future. That's like much more my daily mathematics and the daily questions I hear about. They're related to that.
So, I mean, with these, you're right. I mean, Nokia, the significant collapse of Nokia, and I'm in Canada, the significant collapse of what RIM has gone through, this restructuring, whatever you want to call it, and we're gonna get into a little pieces of this, but is this a three-horse race? Is this really, from a hardware standpoint, is this a three-horse race, or is it a two-horse race, or is there opportunities for companies that we're going to start to see, knocking down some incumbents? Because I think that people thought Nokia, there's no way that Nokia will lose its market share as rapidly as it did. And there was also that conversation around Microsoft back in the day. And there's also that conversation now around even platform-based around RIM.
Absolutely. So I think that it's very good comparison to look back, for example, the video gaming wars that we had, PlayStation versus Wii versus Xbox. They went on for decades. And they were roughly the same players. And they had roughly the same market share. And there was not a dramatic change. One would come with a new release, would perhaps with some clever innovation capture market share. But in the long run, it was very modest adjustments to the whole market. Meanwhile, if we now go back just a year and a half, the end of 2010, the biggest platform was Symbian. The second biggest was RIM, BlackBerry. Number 1 and number 2. iPhone was number 3. Android was growing. So now Android is number 1. iPhone is number 2. BlackBerry and Nokia are in deep dive. And Nokia switches the number 1 biggest platform on the planet for number 7 of the whole option list, where Windows Phone, at the time when Nokia picked Microsoft's Windows Phone, its older incompatible platform, Windows Mobile, was still bigger and selling more. Yeah. So just very, very strange, very, very tumultuous and topsy-turvy kind of environment. But I think that at this moment, when we're looking at 2012 and looking at towards the end of this year, looking into 2013, any developer out there, the obvious 2 certain strong platforms that have clear, strong potential are Android and iPhone. On the Android platform, it will be Samsung primarily, but if you're looking at the whole operating system, then it's the Android platform with Google. So these are the 2 that are in a class of their own. Beyond that, there are then a couple which are the pretenders, competitors. If you're looking outside of North America and outside of Europe, if you're looking at China, you're looking at Africa, you're looking at Latin America, you're looking at the rest of Asia, then it's Symbian, OV Store, or what's now the Nokia Store. That's still in 90% of the pockets in Africa of smartphones, 80% of the installed base in places like India, and so forth. By far the biggest app store is the OV Store. The Xbox 360 is forbidden in China. Nobody uses a Microsoft PC on the continent of Africa. They don't. There are no licensed Windows there. There's no network connectivity. You don't have any chance of storing stuff in the cloud, etc. So then when we look at the alternate platforms, then we find very surprising use for a Canadian audience, especially. BlackBerry is the second biggest platform in Latin America. BlackBerry is the second biggest platform in the Middle East. BlackBerry is the second biggest platform on the continent of Africa. It's not the iPhone, it's not the Android, and it's definitely not Windows. So these will then give you a little bit of the kind of focus area. On the other hand, if you come to Europe, then Symbian is dying there, and it's definitely iPhone, it's Android, and that's a two-way race in that market. The one issue I would keep an eye on is Samsung. Samsung is very lukewarm in its support of Android. It has already launched its own platform called Bada, which is quite popular in given random European countries and increasingly popular in emerging world markets. From Bada, Samsung will migrate to Tizen. Tizen will be developed together with Intel. Tizen Alliance has several handset makers committed to it, like HTZ and ZTE and Huawei, several other Panasonic, several other Asian handset makers, plus several carriers. Telefonica, Vodafone, etc. carrier groups are supporting Tizen. So it could easily be the real third ecosystem, where Microsoft might be the fifth or sixth ecosystem, and then we'll have the fight with BlackBerry on the enterprise space and so forth.
I got to ask you, Tomi, when we talk about this, because is there an opportunity for these hardware makers? We talk about Samsung really dominating in hardware, but is there an opportunity for them to, embrace an operating system like Android, get their hardware into so many people's hands, and then say, okay, the next iteration of that hardware is going to be Tizen, or is going to be their own operating system? And is that how they're going to spread this, around the world? Is that a logical process?
It would be, the longer we go into the future, the more difficult that transition becomes. So early on, when there was nothing locking the customer, it was very easy to switch the platform and the customer wouldn't even know. Yeah. But today, when we're starting to have our games, we're starting to download, we're having our different music services that we subscribe to, and several, our money, our wallet is starting to become part of the mobile phone. There are many other elements which bind us to one given platform. So this is one where Samsung could definitely not take its whole Android user base and expect to migrate all of them over. But on the other hand, the big growth this year, 300 million, or 40% of all smartphones sold, will be under $100 purchase price each. This is without contract. So there'd be $0 smartphones sold in the North American continent with contracts. So that's what Deloitte says. 300 million smartphones this year will be sold that cost under $100. That's Android is barely competitive there. Windows Phone is completely incompatible there. BlackBerry cannot sell at those prices. Definitely iPhone comes nowhere close to those prices. The only ones who can is Bada, theoretically old Symbian, because Symbian was usable at the very low cost. But Android will bend and can serve that price point. But Bada was built to serve low-cost handsets. So this is the one where I think Samsung will rather rapidly start to capture a large part of that. Then when they migrate that to their Tizen platform, which will be more in line with Linux-based Android and so forth, open source, then I believe they have an opportunity to more merge these two and steal more of the, maybe the Samsung Galaxy S4 would run on Tizen rather than on Android. And if you're a Galaxy user and you love the Samsung software, a Samsung experience already, it could be a reasonably painless migration, but not everyone would leave. Someone else would want to remain on Android and then might go to HTC or go to Sony or someone else who's there.
I mean, that makes sense for the handset makers. Obviously, this growth is good for Samsung. But then we're talking about, what I'm hearing is more and more fragmentation in Android and some signal that, yes, it is growing, but it's going to be growing in different directions at different speeds. I mean, what do you see for the future of Android, the fragmentation, the growth? Does it hit a speed bump? What happens along the way, Tony?
Very good. I think that recently we've seen very, very rapid growth of Android, and the logical mathematical assumption is this growth continues. So if Android has now taken 50% of the market, it'll have 75% of the market in a year and a half, and it'll have 90% of the market in 3 years. It would look a little bit then like Microsoft today in the PC world. I don't think that's a realistic scenario. So I think that there are certain strong players today who have very strong installed bases, which are difficult to break. BlackBerry is a perfect example. BlackBerry is struggling to maintain its growth in the consumer space. But in the enterprise space, it is still the dominant platform. So even where enterprises are now allowing their employees to start to bring their own smartphones to work, when they provide actual handsets to their employees, they're mostly BlackBerries. Same for governments, same for so forth. So this is a market which, even if Research in Motion were to play it very poorly, they would still have 5% or 6% of this market 2 years from now. They're not going to vanish. Apple iPhone has a hugely loyal user base. And I think that sooner or later they will come with a lower price point iPhone, so they will start fragmenting the iPhone device space a little bit more. So they'll sit at 15%, 20%, maybe even 25% of the smartphone space several years into the future. That's not going to vanish. There's a huge loyal user base that love the Apple experience. So if we look at all the other platforms, and then we add in Samsung's Bada and Tizen, we add Windows Phone and Windows Mobile, whatever remains of Nokia Symbian, miscellaneous other smaller platforms that also exist, we've got something like 30%, 35%, 40% that is spoken for. That's almost definitely, it will sit with iPhone, it will sit with BlackBerry, it will sit with these other smaller players that Android won't be able to take. So Android currently at 50% of the planet has perhaps a ceiling around 60%, maybe 65%. So in that sense, why Android will grow and it will be the gorilla, it will be the dominant platform on the planet, it will not be like Microsoft is in the PC world. It won't be 90%. So in that sense, it will be a strong, big platform, but almost anyone who wants to develop something for smartphones will need to support more than one platform, meaning much more fragmentation than we had, for example, in the PC world. And now that the app stores exist, now that the ecosystems exist that are relatively stable and strong with target markets for these couple of other manufacturers and their platforms, I think that their long-term sustainability is somewhat guaranteed. I know the RIM investors don't like what's happening to their current market share and their recent profitability, but nonetheless, I think that enterprise customer base is not going to vanish. So it's just that BlackBerry needs to adjust its business and make sure that it's profitable within the clients it has, and then try to find some new opportunities. Same thing with Samsung. It's got deep pockets. It can keep sustaining the Bada Tizen ecosystem for a strong growth. Microsoft is very rich. It can keep pumping money into the Windows world for years to come, no matter what happens to Nokia. Microsoft can make that journey long and keep staying in the fight.
Well, let's continue on that note, Tomi. Then, let's get to Microsoft, because we've had different guests here telling us about, the interest in building an ecosystem. It sounds like a great new community feel over at Microsoft when it comes to developers. You've got analysts out there, reports I'm reading saying, it's doing better than we thought, doing better than we expected. We see growth. We're optimistic. That's what I'm hearing. What are you seeing?
I think that part of this is the skill of Microsoft in managing its marketing communications. They are much closer to Apple in how they do their marketing communications compared to what Nokia was. So Nokia was really bad at this. So in this sense, if we're just looking at Microsoft's battles in the mobile space, they are now spinning the story very, very well. But the facts are horrible. Microsoft had 12% of the global smartphone marketplace 5 years ago. They now have 1% of new sales. With Nokia coming in, they've managed to grow that to 2% in the latest quarter. So that's big growth, yes, but it's still trivial. Apple does 10 times better. Google does 30 times better. And both Apple and Google came into this space less than 5 years ago. So that in this sense, Microsoft has utterly failed year after year after year in this space. But they're good at spinning the story. So right now, if you listen to the statements coming out of AT&T, out of Verizon, they sound very much similar to what Orange was saying in Europe in November, what Vodafone was saying in Europe in November, all the different European operators, carriers were saying in November. What those operators were saying in March was that Nokia has totally failed. This system does not support the carriers. It is completely useless. Our customers hate it. We don't want it. It needs to be completely redesigned. So they took the money from Microsoft. They were very happy to say, oh, it's exceeding our expectations. But when the actual numbers came out, they were pitiful. And after that, the operators say, no, sorry, this is not going to fly. I am afraid we will find similar news coming from the operators when the actual numbers come out. For example, Lumia 900 was launched by AT&T on the Easter weekend. On the Easter weekend, they could not buy the Lumia 900 at any of the AT&T stores. The stores were closed. Nokia knew this. Microsoft knew this. This was not an accident. They did it so that they can drive the Amazon sales ranking to number one. The big excitement, huge $1 million advertising campaign for Lumia. This was finally the first day you could buy it. You go to the AT&T store and you see the store is closed. So what do? You go to online. Can I buy it? I can get it on Amazon, and Lumia debuts at number one. Big stories told all around the world. Oh, Lumia is super sales. Amazon number one. In reality, most phones sold in America are not sold online. They are definitely not sold on Amazon. So it was totally a bogus story. Today, if you hunt for Lumia 900 on Amazon USA sales, they've dropped down to ranking number 9. Even among smartphones, only 1 month after its launch, this super duper great success story has fallen from number 1 to number 9. It is definitely not going to be any kind of sales in the category of Galaxy or iPhone or other popular HTC or other popular American smartphones. So in this sense, I think that we have the difference between that hype and excitement, which Microsoft is very good at building, and the reality, which is still very bad. The really worrying news that comes from the only one so far that has released in any way information came from Russia. In Russia, the return rates of Lumia handsets have been the highest recorded in Nokia history. Customers hate it. Hate it. On that, when I wrote about this on my blog, commenters came on my blog, and I haven't verified this myself, but commenters came on my blog and say, Tomi, by the way, if you go to eBay, you will find tons of Lumia 800 and 710 handsets, which are being offered for $0 sale, nobody taking them. That you can't, their resale price has completely collapsed. So these are not signs of a highly popular, highly successful new launch. These are signs of a failing launch. And I'm afraid this will continue. I just took a look yesterday here in Hong Kong at the local resellers. 2 months ago, every store had Lumia at their window. Today, you not only don't find Lumia at the window, there is not one Nokia phone. Not one Nokia phone. It used to be in Hong Kong that half of the phones on the window 18 months ago, half of the phones sold were Nokias. Nokia smartphones, Nokia dumb phones. Now you don't find one.
Just one quick point, Tomi, because you brought it up, and it sort of surprised many, and I'm doing research into it because people are saying, you mentioned Amazon, people going on Amazon to buy Lumia phones, but Amazon within the race, within this multi-horse race that we're talking about, it would just be really interesting to hear from you, because that's not just Amazon as another flavor of Android, but it's also a device that we don't have it in Europe, but we certainly saw it literally go on fire in the States.
Yeah, I think that Amazon is one of those that it has been very careful on its migration to mobile. They have seen a very good, lucrative digital opportunity, obviously becoming the biggest Western world, reseller on retail store online, challenged by a couple of Chinese ones. That's what I mean in Western world, but in total number of sales. But they've been slow to come to mobile, and they've come more on the tablet side. I think that there's a natural migration for Amazon sooner or later to make a bigger entry into mobile because of their strategy on the cloud. So that they're actually one of the largest, if not the largest, cloud services provider on the infrastructure platform side, Amazon. So as a white label platform for other companies to use cloud services, very often they're using actually Amazon services. So that they're a very big player on the cloud side, and everyone who talks cloud will automatically include, oh, by the way, cloud services will be mostly delivered through mobile. So I think that it is a natural place where Amazon will sooner or later appear into the smartphone, mobile, pocket space anyway. But they're coming slowly, moving through the tablet side first.
All right, I've got to bring this back to Canada because as we know that RIM's recent announcements, they've been moving towards this, maybe a little bit slow. It's kind of like we're watching RIM neck deep in mud, trying to run. It's very difficult to watch. It's very painful to watch as a Canadian. But what is it? What can they do? Is what they're doing with BB10 their future? They've talked about retrenching back into the enterprise space and really focusing on the enterprise space because really that's where their bread and butter was, and they turned their eye away from it. But do you think that you said earlier that this is, even if they fail miserably, they're a 5% company, which is still a good amount of phones distributed. This is a profitable company. People forget that. It's not going anywhere. But what's on the upside? And then how do developers embrace this platform, or is there an opportunity to embrace it?
Yeah, I think that this was one where RIM took a strategic view on what their opportunities were. They, by accident, captured very many early markets in especially the emerging world, but also in several European countries, Britain, for example. They captured the youth market. So they became the popular smartphone of choice for the youth because of BlackBerry Messenger. Mm-hmm. The unfortunate side effect of this was that they had rapid growth outside of the United States and outside of the enterprise market in the consumer space, where all the heavy growth was in smartphones for the last 4 years. They were riding that wave on a wave that was going to end. The youth market is only a small sector of the whole consumer space. The moment they got saturated with BlackBerries, they had no need to grow more BlackBerries. And unfortunately, with BlackBerry Messenger works very well with a 5-year-old BlackBerry. So there was no reason to upgrade the phone. The BlackBerry was rarely the most sexy, coolest, greatest phone on other features, except for the best keyboard and best messaging. Therefore, most young people, older teenagers will have 2 phones. They would keep the old BlackBerry and they would keep upgrading the other phone, if that was the iPhone or if that was the Galaxy or that was the Sony Xperia or whatever their other phone was. They would keep replacing that one and hold on to the old BlackBerry. With this, RIM was stuck with that churn problem that they would keep on reporting disappointing consumer success. That their consumer markets were not growing anywhere near at the same rate as the industry. And now I think that it is a reasonable argument to think that perhaps we should not focus on that area. They're not going to be the cheapest manufacturer to be able to go for the mass market that is now appearing in the world. Perhaps go into a couple of niche areas and especially guard their home, the enterprise space. That in that sense, I think that is good. The one unfortunate sidestep they did was the tablet adventure. So just when Android came on fire and the consumer space truly exploded and mobile and smartphones were growing 70%, 60% the last 2 years, then RIM took their eye off the ball, launched a tablet which was not the perfect tablet anyway, but nonetheless, now they put most of their sales effort, most of their marketing effort, their branding effort to try to enter a new, different kind of market dominated by Apple, where they went head to head against Apple. The BlackBerry was not going head to head against the iPhone. So they went against the most powerful potential rival. And at the same time, because RIM itself was struggling with profitability, they started to fire staff, especially sales staff and marketing staff, which would have been needed to capture that enterprise and the consumer space. So I think that was a misadventure. Quite funny, at the moment, Nokia is committed to learning from that mistake and repeating that mistake. Because right now, I mean, honestly, today Nokia has its stockholders annual meeting, and just before this meeting, Jorma Ollila, the outgoing chairman, former CEO, who built Nokia's mobile phone business, this is in his last day, he's just leaving today as chairman of the company. He gave press interviews where he promised Nokia will be releasing tablets.
Oh, no.
Which is, again, I think the dumbest possible thing you could do if the company is unprofitable today. Then Nokia should first secure to make sure that it returns its handset business to health before attempting to conquer a completely different business where it goes head to head against Apple, where it has no brand strength, where the retail channel is completely different, the sales method is completely different, where the pricing is completely different. It's tablets are not mostly subsidized; they're PCs. You will sell them in PC stores, and most handsets are subsidized, and especially smartphones in the most advanced markets and so forth. So I think that Nokia is now repeating the RIM mistake in this tablet space.
I mean, one of the things that I truly believe is that you're right. RIM focused their entire efforts. Like they turned the CEOs, the co-CEOs, the engineering team turned their entire focus on the playbook, and during a 12-month span did not release a smartphone, did not release a new piece of technology, and then they came out with a crippled device. And maybe the playbook eventually gets to the point where it's a competitive, device that people want to use or is an effective tool. But this is purely speculation, but do you think that this precipitous slide happens if they look away from the tablet and focus on at least releasing a couple of new phones during that year that they focused on the playbook? Do you think that we would still be having this conversation about RIM's decline today if they had just focused on their devices?
I think that there's very, very good evidence to show that the world is not one size fits all. Nokia used to have a large portfolio of smartphones. They released more than 50 smartphones per year, more than one per week around the planet. Not in every country, but around the planet, they released more than one new smartphone every week. That was at the time when Nokia had 1/3 of the planet's market share. They lost it, and they've been pruning their portfolio. Meanwhile, who's been expanding their portfolio? Samsung. Samsung said earlier this year they're releasing 20 new smartphones for the India market alone. That's almost 2 per month, just for the India market. So I mean that they are filling in that gap which Nokia stepped out of. And they are almost perfectly executing the strategy that brought Nokia to success. And I think that in this sense, definitely, BlackBerry made a very big mistake not releasing a new phone. They were releasing at the rate of about 4 new phones per year before this gap. And that was definitely a contributing factor to the rapid decline that they saw in their market share. The global handset replacement cycle for all phones is 14 months, 14 months. For smartphones, it's 13 months. In advanced markets, it's 11 months. So that's not every person. It's not the average person, but it's the average replacement cycle. Some very geeky people will have a new phone every quarter and will just go and get the latest phone. Oh, now I need to have the iPhone 4S. Oh, now I need to have the Galaxy, S3. Now I need to have the PureView, whatever is the latest, Samsung, BlackBerry Bold, and every week need to show, oh yes, I have the coolest phone. Because some people replace very, very high pace. It means the average number mathematically becomes lower. But the median person, the average person on the planet, tends to replace their smartphone less than once every 2 years, on about approximately once every year and a half, every 18 months. The employed person in the industrialized world, Western world, will have 2 phones. So if we replace both of those phones every 18 months, it means that we have a new phone in our pocket every 9 months on average. And BlackBerry cannot afford to leave a year gap in this space.
I'm just curious, when you're talking about this, Tomi, if we look at it from a higher level, how much innovation do we really need in mobile? Because I remember the discussion about Apple and saying that it's brilliant to move in the direction of incremental innovation. It's perfectly fine to just have a little and then a little bit more and a little bit more, rather than trying to be a breakthrough product. And that's what you seem to be saying here too, is, get those phones out there, have no gap in the product cycle, but don't try to be path breaking in the process. Is that what I'm hearing here?
It's the difference between a niche player and a mass market player. I think this is the same if we look at cars. You look at Porsche and you look at Toyota. So Porsche cannot hope to be profitable Porsche competing with Toyota and building taxis and building vans and building electric cars and building family cars and hatchbacks. No, that will not be Porsche anymore. It will not be cool. It will not be sexy. It will not be desirable. It will not be the sports car. But if Porsche truly understands its soul and keeps constantly making just the most super desirable sporty cars, whether it's a 2-seat car, whether it's a 4-seat car, whether it's an SUV, but it's always Porsche. It recognizes its place. Then that's perfect for a niche player who can be highly profitable. On the other hand, if you're a mass market player, if you're Toyota, you have to constantly compete in every market against Ford, against Volkswagen, against General Motors, etc. So in that case, you cannot afford to let the diesel market go, or afford to get the family market go, or afford to get the, any one, vans, minivans, whatever becomes popular in cars. You have to play in that space. And in that sense, I think Samsung understands this very, very well. Nokia used to understand this very well. So that it's one that they just want to make sure they flood the market with every single conceivable form factor variation that has a reasonable chance of success. Then when they have a hit product, they rush that production into every market. The Galaxy, excellent. We will keep on making more of those. Meanwhile, they experiment. Maybe people like Pico projectors, so we try that. Maybe we want super cameras, so we try that. Maybe we want, separate keyboards, we try that. Maybe we want the super large screens. They try that. And then they keep on experimenting to make sure they don't miss out on any one market niche.
All right, now what about the thing that gets you so excited, Tomi? We talked about this at the very beginning. This is the eighth mass medium. It's kind of elevating form factor out of the, away from the glass, away from buttons, and away from things that I think inhibit or hinder. I always think about this, is that the last thing that I ever wanted to do was hold up my PDA to my phone, my cheek, and use it as a phone. And the last thing that I ever wanted to do was use my phone as a PDA. And but somehow what we ended up with was this mashup of these two devices that are maybe seemingly are a natural fit, but really are not a natural fit when it comes to a form factor. And now you're talking about this eighth mass medium, which is augmented reality. Tell us about this. Why? What was it? What changed for you? Was it Google Glasses, or what was it that really pushed you over the line?
Very good. First, I have to give credit for the concept itself. So when I wrote the book about the seventh mass media, those of your viewers who don't know, I chronicle the order of the mass media. Print was first 500 years ago. Then we get recordings, we get cinema, radio, television, internet, and mobile. So that's the seven mass media. And the key point here was why I developed this methodology was to try to argue that mobile is as different from the internet as television is different from radio. While both were broadcast media, both had similar content, they had significant differences. And we can understand that immediately. You're a very glamorous looking person. You're good for television. You're an ugly guy like Tomi, put him on radio. We don't want to see him on TV. So, television, radio, different kind of needs. We need, different kind of, lighting issues, all kind of things like that, which we don't need on radio and so forth. So I was using that methodology to explain the difference. And almost immediately after the book came out, everyone was asking me, Tomi, what's the eighth mass media? What's the eighth mass media? So Raimo van der Klein, the CEO of LiAR, the augmented reality company from the Netherlands, he argued on my blog and said, Tomi, actually, I think augmented reality will be the eighth mass media. And at the time when he argued it, the only uses I had ever seen of augmented reality were military goggles, fighter pilots, and so forth, which is not a mass media, and then the smartphone. So smartphone augmented reality apps. And I was thinking that at this moment, augmented reality is only a media format. for mobile phones. But I don't accept yet, it doesn't seem to me as being a separate mass medium like print would be, like cinema would be, like radio would be. So with its own format families. But that changed last few years. No, last 2 years, I started to see augmented reality used in other places. The first one was we started to see augmented reality in the sound space. So now we had, for example, the rap artist Sida, the Japanese rap artist, released his album as a sound adventure of Japan. You could go to different parts of Japan. There would be location-based stories of why that location was relevant to Sida, the rap artist. Here's where he met his wife. Here is where he had his accident with his motorcycle, whatever else. And he tells these stories. At the background, in that location, you can hear one track from the new album, the specific song that fits that mood, and so forth. So this was the way to promote the album. Sida fans would have a great adventure around Japan, looking for the songs and looking for the places and listening to the songs. And of course, when the album was released, it debuted at #1 on the Japanese charts. So clever way, but this kind of opened my eyes more that while, yes, we were still using a mobile phone to deliver the sound experience, it was no longer that visual experience. We now had another way. And theoretically, it could be used yet other ways. Then I started to see the tablets. People were starting to use tablets also for augmented reality. And this further improved my understanding that perhaps there is a wider reach. But now, totally sold when I saw the Google Goggle, promotions and videos starting to come out, that this is close on the horizon. They will soon be in our shops. We remember a little while ago, everyone was walking around with those Bluetooth earpieces that now are a little bit too kind of geeky, and people are not using them as much. But for a while, they were very popular. I think we will soon start to see those Google type of goggles and glasses. And that, to me, brings so much more of the augmented reality experience beyond just the smartphone that I'm willing to accept. It is not only a format for mobile, it is actually a completely new medium, mass medium. It's not yet a commercially viable mass medium. It's still quite a niche medium. But it is very exciting. We have in America the launch of the Avengers movie. Avengers did an augmented reality game. You could go and pick augmented reality characters from the Avengers movie, and you could you play with them and place yourself in a picture with them and so forth. Walmart, the store, did a cross promotion where for you to take the free Avengers characters onto your phone, you had to go inside a Walmart store to capture them. And there'd be different places you could pick the different characters inside a Walmart store. So in this way, Walmart was able to drive footfall, visitors to their stores based on their promotion of the Avengers movie using augmented reality. Meanwhile, Universal was celebrating their 100-year anniversary in London, Universal Movies in London by releasing dinosaurs into the all the shopping streets of London, Oxford Street and so forth. So kids would notice, they would borrow their parents' phones and they would look for the dinosaurs, T-Rexes running around and being vicious all through London. So the kind of things that are starting to happen with the different media brands learning about augmented reality, and the different media and the different technology brands experimenting in this place, we are starting to see it spread. It's a little bit like where QR codes were 2 or 3 years ago. Now we're starting to see them everywhere. So I think that within perhaps 2 years, it will start to establish itself as a mass market medium. And now for me, this is a very exciting space. This is like looking at SMS early on, 15 years ago, looking at ringtones, 10 years ago, and so forth, that what all can we invent in this space?
I'm just curious on that note, because yes, there are brands doing it, there are media companies doing it, but there are a lot of them that aren't. And as we discussed before, I'm working on a book. You're going to be in it again, Tomi, obviously with your 8th Mass Media, which is really about this. What's the value proposition here? And what are the other scenarios so that, yes, we stop talking about maybe niche and we start really talking about, what you're talking about, which is the 8th Mass Media, which means it has a mass market or a mass appeal.
Very, very, very good. I think a perfect example comes from Japan, like almost everything in mobile comes from Japan. It's called the iButterfly. So this was developed by D2C and NTT Docomo, and they brought the iButterfly here to Hong Kong. So this is one of the world's most advanced, smartphone markets, one of the world's advanced 3G markets, and so forth. So easy place to launch stuff like this. iButterfly was launched a year ago. In the first year, they have 300,000 registered users who are hunting these virtual butterflies with their phones, looking for them. They're regional, so you have to go to different parts of Hong Kong to find the local butterflies. They've delivered more than 2 million advertisements, because every time when you capture a butterfly, you get an ad. So you get a free, a discount coupon, coffee at Pacific Coffee or whatever else like that. So now Hong Kong has 7 million people. So what is 300,000 users, but 2 million ads in less than a year. So this is now the birth. This is the early start. It's starting to be a viable business. It's a long road to go from here, but we're starting to get there. For example, the television show Top Gear has one of its presenters, James May, is doing museum guided tours as an augmented reality, like a hologram guide. So you can just look at your mobile phone and you see a small James May, walking around with you and telling you, because they know where you are in the museum, whatever the nearest exhibit is. So you get a celebrity to narrate your museum trip, and you get to see him talk about it and so forth. Much more exciting than the traditional guided tour. No offense to the museum guides, they're wonderful, but it is more exciting if you get a celebrity to give you that tour.
Oh man, this is why I love talking with you, Tomi, because it is a concentrated amount of information, such a short amount of time. But what you're talking about here is such a fundamental shift in the way that first of all, that we embrace mobile, the concept of mobile. It goes beyond the form factor, which is the device that we're carrying with us right now. I mean, mobile is going to become, how do you classify that, Peggy? You've said, listen, mobile is no longer going to be, we're not going to call it mobile anymore. It's just going to be.
Yeah, the prefix, that's my argument. It's just going to disappear. It's like that wonderful argument about technology. When it's really effective, it's invisible.
Yeah.
Here, maybe when it's really effective, it's actually enhancing or morphing or bringing together the physical and digital worlds. I mean, maybe that's what we're talking about here ultimately, and then it disappears. What do you think, Tomi? I'm just curious at a philosophical level here.
Absolutely, yes. And we do see it in small steps. So for example, that early on it was very exciting to have your mobile boarding pass on an airplane. But now we had a survey last year by CETA and the airline industry, and they found that 17% of the world's airline travelers already have used a mobile boarding pass or mobile check-in. It's no longer exciting. It's no longer amazing. It's just starting to become accepted as normal. So it's like, in Finland, it's completely normal that you pay for your public transportation in Helsinki via SMS with a mobile phone. You wouldn't think of it as being exciting anymore. And so we are getting to that point. It slowly, the technology part kind of vanishes. And that's a very good sign in terms of the maturity of the industry, that it moves beyond just us geeks.
This is not a rehearsed question. We didn't go over this, but I'm very interested to know, because we've seen some giants being toppled as a result of this. When you start to think about Google's acquisition of Motorola, you start to think about Nokia and its precipitous decline, RIM's precipitous decline, all in a very short period of time. Microsoft as the scrappy underdog. This is a shift in a very short period of time brought on by mobile. But what we're talking about here is an eighth mass medium where, we're not keying into a device like this. We're leveraging things around us. Mobile becomes mobile. It becomes just part of our daily lives. Are there companies out there that you look at right now? Like I look at Google, for example. My example is I look at Google and I think they're in jeopardy. right? They're a $10 billion company, and I understand they're very profitable, but they're in jeopardy as a result of mobile usurping where they make 90% of their revenue in their advertising model. So they're desperately looking for ways to generate an income through mobile. Android could be that, or it couldn't be. Who knows? But I look at mobile disrupting something like Google, because search then becomes a natural artifact through glasses, right? Where it doesn't matter where you're getting that information. You're not going to Google. They're not doing display. They've got to find a new way to do it. Am I way off on this? And what are the companies that you look at and say, man, all right, they have to change, or else they are in jeopardy in the next 18 to 24 months?
This is one where I really like by coincidence, I did that case study 6 years ago about South Korea, the most advanced digital country. In South Korea, they talk about ubiquitous digital services, which are just available everywhere. So now when you build a bridge, the bridge has, of course, the digital sensors. When you build a hospital, its floor has digital sensors. If a patient has fallen, the nurse is alerted. So the kind of, if you go to a shopping mall, honestly, South Korean shopping malls have stores that sell home robots. That when I go to Finnish shopping malls, or when I go Swedish shopping malls or London shopping malls, I don't see stores which are only having home robots. But South Korea already has them. So that in that sense, they're a little bit further on that migration path, and they are now thinking of that space. Police officers are being taught. There's every single police office in South Korea, in every police precinct, has one cyber policeman. So what happens if you're identity theft? What happens about cyber bullying? These kind of issues that will become very relevant as we migrate most of our economy into that digital space. Now, coming back to answer your question, if we look back at how mobile disrupted and cannibalized other industries, the camera industry was completely obliterated by the camera phone. Giants of the camera industry, Minolta, Konica, Kodak, Polaroid, vanished from the industry, sold their camera business, or went bankrupt. Polaroid went bankrupt twice. So it's like, and meanwhile, the world's most used camera today is Nokia. Number 2 most used camera on the planet is Samsung. Very soon it'll be the other way around. So the opportunities are in mobile were huge to disrupt anything, to disrupt not just the fixed landline business, not just to disrupt internet business or media business, but come on, cameras. If you go back and remember payphones and old phones, that we see in the movies, black and white movies, that industry and the film-based photography industry were completely incompatible, and it was not conceivable in the 1970s to imagine that someday AT&T, telephone company, could somehow steal the business from Kodak. The camera business. There was no overlap. Augmented reality will now introduce probably a similar scale of disruption to what we now experience in mobile, to what mobile did to the internet. That'll happen in the next 10, 15 years. It will also further disrupt the older media, like movies, like the internet, like television, and so forth. The funny thing is, if we look at Google, for your argument, Rob, Google is one of the pioneers in this augmented reality space. The first smartphone platform that allowed augmented reality access, camera phone to the display, was Android. It wasn't the iPhone, it wasn't Nokia Symbian, it wasn't the other, it was Android. Google saw it early. And that's why Google's experimentation now with Google goggles and so forth. So I do think that they're an early mover in that space, very intelligent company, very deep pockets. They'll probably be a major player, at least early, on the augmented reality side. When it comes to mobile, we just had a calculation. I think it was Horace Dediu, Asimco blog, just calculated that Google earns currently 1 penny, 1 euro cent per day, or maybe 1 US cent per day, out of every single mobile phone user who receives 2.7 ads per day. So per ad, and receives 2.7 ads through the Google system per day, meaning that Google earns $8 million per day today on mobile advertising, meaning at the end of this year, they will be making something close to $8 billion, 7 point something billion. If they still have 50% of the market share of Android at the end of this year, then they'll be making $7.5-8 billion just out of advertising sold through Android.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention all the other paid services which Google will of course offer to us as they build into this space. But that was just advertising. So I think that Google made that intelligent move early. They saw the opportunity and they've invested heavily into it. And now they're starting to reap the rewards. Obviously, part of that was purchase of AdMob. Smart move early by Google. Incidentally, some other companies, don't believe in mobile advertising, like Nokia, which sold its mobile advertising unit just a couple of months ago. One company sees the future and seizes it and really goes there. Another one is going in the exact opposite direction and casts away what it had built. So I think that it's just, two companies, trains going in opposite direction.
Tomi, I cannot thank you enough for doing this. We have spent almost an hour together, and it has been incredible as usual. And we were joking that this is going to be the Tomi Marathon. I think we could probably spend the 5 hours going through this and just listening and dissecting this industry piece by piece. We would love to have you back on after, as you start to gather more thoughts around the eighth mass medium about what you think about augmented reality. And I think that this is something that this is the reason why we're so interested in having a conversation with Tomi, is that if Tomi's talking about it, there's a revenue opportunity in a short period of time for you as the developers out there. So start looking at this. If you're tired of competing in the app space where there's a million apps out there and it's very difficult to get awareness made for your application, start to think a little bit into the future. If you've got that runway, 18 to 24 months out, and you should be following Tomi at Tomi Ahonen on Twitter, because he is going to enlighten you as to where the opportunities are in that period of time where you can actually make some money. So Tomi, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I really appreciate your time on this.
Thank you, Rob. It's always my pleasure, and so much my pleasure, Peggy, to see you again. So yes, I'm always yours. Let's come back and have another discussion soon with your viewers, maybe half a year or several months down the line, and not repeat exactly the same stories. But it's very much my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Please. And Tomi, where should we send people to? It's tomiahonen.com, but is that where we should send everybody?
Yeah, or if you want to Google me, then Google Communities Dominate.
Yeah, and that's
Communities Dominate. That's my blog. So my blog articles are long, but also what you will see on the blog, they are often early drafts of what will be in the next books. Yeah. So in that sense, if you want to read Tomi's books for free and early before anyone else had them, read my blog.
I love that. Tomi, thank you so much.